Oh, what's going on? What's going on? More news in boxing. So supposedly we have new information as it pertains to the Terence Crawford versus Earl Spence fight. And I'll kind of get right to it. I've said this a million times before. I'll say it again. When it comes to sources, as it pertains to this fight, no matter what they say, don't believe it. It's the same sources have come up with too many different things. And it's been over and over and over again over about what 5 6 months now. So the reality is nobody knows what's exactly going on. We don't know what the issues are, we don't know what the problems are, and we don't know if this fight's going to be done at all. We don't know what date they're going to fight, if they fight, locations, nothing. Okay. They're keeping very tight knit when it comes to this. It doesn't matter what stuff comes out. PBC isn't saying anything. Earl Spence isn't saying anything. He's just staying quiet. Supposedly, some people have spoken on behalf of Crawford, and even with the information they put out, where supposedly he had agreed to everything. Supposedly he signed a contract, but then it says, but then the ball's on their court, which made no sense to me. If you agreed to everything, then it should be cool. But then it should just be a situation where obviously they just signed, and that's it. And it turns out that, oh no, he didn't really sign the contract. That, oh good, no, he agreed to everything. He agreed to everything, but agreed to all terms. That's what they said. And now a week later, and also he was getting paid no money for the fight. He's only getting paid 35%. He signed the contract. Now it's a week later, a week and a half later, whatever it is. All of a sudden now, the date of November 19th that they said the fight was going to be on, now all of a sudden that's probably not a possibility. Now all of a sudden, Terence Crawford wants one group says, and one report says that he has his bilateral rematch clause where if he wins in the rematch, he gets the lion's share of the purse. If he loses, he still can activate that rematch. And we have other reports saying that no, the Spence camp only wants a rematch for Earl Spence, and if Earl Spence wins, he wants to move on. He doesn't want a rematch Terence Crawford. And then now we're also saying that other reports saying that Terence Crawford, he wants transparency when it comes to the funds that are being spent, I guess, on the fight because he's getting no upfront money. He's only getting paid from the back end, but that he also wants to have input in what they spend, as far as the fight's concerned, because he's only getting paid from the back end. So basically, he wants to, he wants to be able to veto anything that's being done. He wants to have power where, okay, he's part of the decision making on what the expenses are going to be and what they're going to spend it on, which is just something that's absurd, and PBC would never agree to it. That's just not happening. You're not going to, the person who's never done a successful pay-per-view, okay, who doesn't know how to promote one, who's worked with pretty much the people who don't know how to promote any, are not going to then come here and tell the people who have done record-breaking pay-per-views how to spend their money and how to do what they do. That's just an impossibility. It's not going to happen, but supposedly that's, what's going on, and so because of that, the fight's in limbo. And also that if, since it's taking so long, Terence Crawford might now want a fight in between him fighting Earl Spence, which also makes no sense. It's like, why would PBC pay you to do a fight, and they already don't want to? They're already having issues working with you to begin with. So now they're gonna start trying negotiating with you for a completely different fight when they're having as hard a time as they are with setting up this fight. Not to mention Earl Spence, he wants to move straight up to 154 ASAP. Basically, the only reason he's down here is basically to fight you. None of this makes sense, and everything's all over the place. And even the terms that are supposedly set up, it sounds asinine to me, just due to the fact that when I'm all about history and what people do. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what the Zone says, Eddie Hearn says. I go by their history and how they handle situations. I don't care what Eddie Hearn, Top Rank says. I mean, not Eddie Hearn, Bob Arum, Top Rank says. I go by the history of what they do, how they do things. I don't care if anybody says from PBC. I go by the history of how they do things. And one thing we know when it pertains to PBC is they have never been known to being difficult to deal with necessarily, or in giving horrible contracts. And that's including with people who have fought that are not part of their crew. They're not part of their organization, I should say. You know, from Conor McGregor, You never heard him saying anything negative. Dana White was like, he was very shocked. He's heard, he was making the assumption it was going to be such a problem dealing with them, and it wasn't. Manny Pacquiao, so, even Manny Pacquiao and Bob Arum said, nah, they were pleasant to deal with. There was no issues. Tyson Fury, he never had any problems, never had any issues. There was no things of, oh, we need to know where the back end money's coming from and this and that. Canelo Alvarez, there was never any issues. Miguel Cotto, okay, there was never any issues. There's just never any issues. But all of a sudden nowadays, all these problems. We've had different other people also come, from like the UK and what sort and fight with PBC fighters. Never any issues. So I don't know. What all I'm basically waiting for right now is two things. I'm waiting for either the fight to be done, and then once the fight is done and it's confirmed, we can find out all the real details, and we kind of find out how off everybody was with their assumptions. That's the number one. Or the fight doesn't get made. And when the fight doesn't get made, then we find out the real deal, the real information of what exactly happened. Because I remember with like the Caleb Plant and the Canelo Alvarez fight, the first time when they were supposed to fight, and it didn't happen. Now, while they were going through negotiations, all this information from ESPN kept coming out that, Caleb Plant was being an issue, that he wanted too much money, that he was outpricing himself, which made absolutely no sense because Caleb Plant's side was the one with the money, and they were the one making Canelo Alvarez the offer. So it made no sense that somehow Canelo Alvarez would be, financially, that Caleb Plant what's going to be outpricing himself. I was like, how? You're the one your side's the one that's offering the funds. So it didn't make any sense whatsoever. A couple of different reports that were coming from ESPN. Then the negotiations completely fall apart. And once the negotiation fell apart, then we found out the truth. We found out the truth was the issue was Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez kept asking for more things and more things and more things, and they kept saying yes, 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 yes. But they got to the point where it was like, no, we're not giving you any more money, and all these additional things that you're asking for is ridiculous. And that was it. They were done. They weren't gonna do what Canelo Alvarez wanted anymore. So they walked away from it because it just got to the point where it was like, you know what, enough is enough. So Canelo Alvarez, he goes over to the Zone, tries to use that negotiation, I guess, for leverage to get some kind of deal like that with the Zone. He couldn't get it. So then he came back and he signed a deal and they fought, and they ended up basically, fighting. And that was it. So, but there was nothing that was crazy in that contract. There was nothing where it was like they were being difficult. No, they weren't the ones being difficult. They were actually bending over backwards to try to make the fight happen. When it came with Tyson Fury, they did what was necessary to make the fight happen. Tyson Fury understood what's going on. They understood what's going on. They made things happen. Miguel Cotto and others, the same thing. They'll negotiate with you. They will work with you. But they're only going to go to a certain point where it's like, all right, cool, we're done. If they truly didn't want this fight to happen, they would have been done with Terence Crawford a long time ago. A long time ago. But even at the 11th hour, they're still trying to get this fight done. They're still trying to get it negotiated, and they're still trying to get it completed because this is something that Errol Spence wants. So they're going to do everything in their power to make it happen. Absolutely everything in their power to make it happen. But there is going to be a breaking point. What that breaking point is, I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know what's going to cause it. I don't know if Errol Spence wants to fight this year. If he wants to fight this year, they were talking about, him possibly still fighting on November 19th against the WBA mandatory. He was told, hey, get me in the gym, start training, get ready for a fight, with somebody to be announced on November 19th. So I guess there's a possibility that, they have him on standby where it's like, all right, if this doesn't work, we can just have, Errol Spence fight him, and we can have it on Dallas, Texas, in Texas. Because on that particular week, the Cowboys are playing away that week. So they would actually have that whole week to get everything situated and ready for that event, if that's what they decide they want to do. Is that what they're going to do, though? I don't know. Is this fight going to be done? I don't know. Now people are talking about it. It might get done it might do it on February, which is like, okay, it's almost like people just keep throwing out dates. Like, what's the most likely date? What are the most likely dates? Let's look at past events and past fights. When could it be most likely them do it? and then they just kind of just throw things on the wall and hoping that one day it sticks, basically. But they really don't know. So my advice to everybody is that don't believe anything. I'm not saying this person's ducking this person. I'm not saying that person's ducking that person. I'm just saying realistically, none of these so-called sources know what the hell they're talking about. And they've all been wrong enough times for us to call BS on anything that comes out of any of their mouths. This is one situation where I'm saying I don't care who's giving the report. I don't care who are their sources. Call BS on it. Period. Don't believe any of it at all. And as time goes, we'll see what exactly the truth is and what exactly happened. Either way, whether if they make the fight or they don't make the fight. But hopefully they do make the fight, And we'll see. But I told you I wasn't going to be easy dealing with this person. But it is what it is. Like, subscribe, share. I'm out.